We continue now at the top of Daf Samach Beis and Meseches Zevachim. This is Zevachim Daf 62b. And the previous summit of Yosef said that Abaye was able to understand what he was saying, unlike the others who were around and listening to what he was saying. And so he referred to those other students as B'nai Keturah, as the sons of Keturah. And Rashi explains, B'nai Keturah means B'nai Avram atem. You are like sons of Avram, Avalo Kezera Yitzchak v'Yaakov, but you're not like the children of Yitzchak and Yaakov, meaning to say you're not like Abaye. You are, so to speak, my students, but not as great as Abaye, who's able to understand what I am saying. And the Gemara continues, B'nai Achased Rabbi Tarfon, the sons of the sister of Rabbi Tarfon, Hava Yosvi, Kamed Rabbi Tarfon, they were sitting in front of Rabbi Tarfon. Pasach v'yamar, he opened and he said as follows, the Pasuk says, Vayosef Avram vayikach Isha u'shma Yochani, it says that Avram continued, he took a wife, and her name was Yochani. That of course is incorrect, the real name was Keturah. So Amri Le, so they said to him Keturah, the Keturah Ksiv, it's written in the Pasuk Keturah, not Yochani, and Kari Aleim B'nai Keturah, so he called them B'nai Keturah. Rashi explains, Pasach v'yamar kadeshi yadabru, he said this in order to get them to speak. Yochani said, Yochani milsa bi'almu dukarma kadei leftoach piyam, he just said it in order to get them to talk. B'nai Keturah, and so he referred to them as B'nai Keturah, meaning Einam Yodin l'daber b'halacha, they don't know how to speak in terms of halacha, that's what he was trying to say. And the Gemara continues, Amar Abaye bar Huna, Amar Rav Chama bar Gurya. Abaye bar Huna says that Rav Chama bar Gurya says, Gezerin sha'asa Moshe, the wood, the logs that Moshe Rabbeinu used, that he arranged at the top of the Mizbeach, Orchan Amma, they were an Amma long, Verochvan Amma, and they were an Amma wide, Ve'ovyan, in terms of their thickness, Kemacha Godesh saw, it was like the wood that was used as a leveler when you would have a saw, a heap of saw of grain. Rashi explains, Gezerin Shnei Gizrei Eitzim, these were the two pieces of wood, Sarach L'Sader Barosh HaMizbeach HaMarocha, they would arrange them on the top of the Mizbeach, L'Tamid Shal Shachar, for the Tamid of the morning, B'Kohen Echad, L'Tamid Shal Bein HaRabayim B'Shnei Kohanim, they used one Kohen in the morning, by the Tamid Shal Bein HaRabayim two Kohanim, Kedekayim L'An B'Seder Yuma, as we say in Seder Yuma, Amma Orko v'Amma Rachbo was an Amma long and Amma wide, Kemidas Makam HaMarocha, we said that the location, the place of the Maroch itself was one by one Amma, and so therefore that was also the size of the wood. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah, and Rabbi Yirmiyah says, Ba'amma Geduma, when we're talking about the Amma here, we're talking about the shorter Amma. And Rashi explains, Ba'amma Geduma Katsara, shorter Amma, Shalo Yatsu Chutz LaMaracha. The point is, the wood was not supposed to extend outside of the Maracha, V'yakvu HaKohanim Elahakif, because that would prevent the Kohanim from being able to walk around, so it had to be exact. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Yosef, Rav Yosef says, V'lav Hainu D'Tanya, isn't that what we learned in the following brisa? Al ho'etzim asher al ho'esh asher al mizbeach. It says the wood on the fire on the mizbeach, shelo yu eitzim yotzin min ha-mizbeach klum. The point is that the wood shouldn't stick out at all from the mizbeach. Rashi explains, Lav Hainu D'Tanya v'yama geduma lomali ela amma mitzum tzemes. Rashi understands that to mean it doesn't need to be an amma geduma. The point over here is it's an amma mitzum tzemes. It has to be an exact amma. It cannot stick out at all. And the Gemara continues, Tanan Hasam, we learned in a Mishnah over there, this is a Mishnah in Meseches Midos, Kevesh Hayel Droma Shal Mizbeach, the ramp was at the south of the Mizbeach, Orech Shloshim Ushtayim, Al Rochav Sheish Esrei, it was a length of 32 amos, it was a width of 16 amos. Minah Hanimili, from where we know this, Amar Rav Huna says, Amar Krotz, because the Pasuk says, V'shachar also al Yerech HaMizbeach Tzafona, it says he's going to slaughter it on the Yerech HaMizbeach, the thigh, so to speak, of the Mizbeach to the north, and what that means is Sheyeh Yerech B'tzafon Upanov B'darom, the Yerech, the thigh, should be at the north, and the face should be at the south. The point over here is that the Kevesh is like the face of the Mizbeach, and then the feet, if a person were lying down, the feet would then be in the north, the thigh in the north. That's how the Mizbeach should be arranged. The Gemara says, Eimo Yerech B'tzafon, Upana B'tzafon, maybe, if we're talking about how a person looks, maybe the thigh and the face are in the north, maybe the person is like sitting down, who says the person is lying down? Amar Rava says, Rami Gavra Ape, place the person on his face, meaning the person that we're talking about here symbolically is lying down, so again the face is in the south, and the legs are in the north. Amar le Abaye said to Madaram, on the contrary, Taritz Vosiv Gavra, we should have the person stand him up, let him be sitting up, and let it all face the same direction. Amar le, he said back to him, Ravua Ksiv, it says in the pasuk Ravua, and we can understand that to mean like rovates, like the person is crouching or lying down. But the Gemara says, Vami boile de meraba Ravui, but Ravua is teaching us square. It has nothing to do with the symbolic individual, whether the person is lying down or not. The Gemara says to that, Miksiv Meruba, does it say Meruba? That would mean square. But the Gemara says, But according to your reasoning, does it say ravutz? So it says ravua. Why are we learning that he's lying down? Amarle said to him, ravua ksiv. It says the word ravua, and that's the whole point. It's understood both ways. It's understood as square, and it's also understood again as a person lying down. Again, the face is in the south, and the yerech, the person's legs, the thigh, is in the north. And the Gemara continues, V'tana maisi lo mehacha. The Tana, he brings it from here, from the following, meaning the idea that the kevish, that the ramp was in the south, comes from the following source. The Tanya, as we learned in a Brayser, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda says that the pasuk says in Yechezkel, the pasuk says Uma'alosehu, and its steps Pinos Kadim, they face the east, and we learn from this pasuk Kol Pinos Shatapona. Anytime you make a turn, Lo Yehu Ela Derech Yamin LeMizrach, the person has to turn right, the Kohen has to turn right and face the east. Meaning to say, if the ramp is in the south and the Kohen is ascending the ramp in the south, if he then turns to the right, he will be facing east, and so therefore that's how we know that again the ramp is in the south. The Gemara says Ve'ema Smol LeMizrach. But why do we have to say that he's turning to the right? All we're saying is that if he turns, he's going to face east. Maybe he turns left and he faces east, in which case we can say that the ramp is actually in the north. And the Gemara says, Lo Salkadaitach, don't think that it's possible that he's turning left. It has to be turning right. The Tani Rami Bar Yechezkel, because Rami Bar Yechezkel taught, and the Shinuya Nuschos changes it to Rami Bar Yechezkel. Rami Bar Yechezkel taught, Yam Sha'asa Shlomo, the basin that Shlomo HaMelech made. The pasuk says, Omed al Shnei Masar Bakar. It says in Divrei Hayomim that it stood on 12 cattle, 12 statues of Bakar. Shlosha ponim Tzafono, Shlosha ponim Yama, Ushlosha ponim Negbo, Shlosha ponim Mizracha. 3 of them face the north, and 3 of them face the west. 3 of them face the south, and 3 of them face the east. But we learn from that pasuk that Kol Pinos Shatapona, anytime you turn, Lo Yehu Ela Derech Yamin LeMizrach, you have to turn towards the right, to the east. It means to say that you turn towards the right. The point over here is if someone is facing something that is on the inside, let's say he's north of something that is inside within, and he wants to go around it. So if he's going to go first Tzafona and then Yama, so that would mean he's turning towards the right to go to the west. That's how you see that all of the turns are made to the right, and so therefore you understand again, when the Kohen goes up the ramp, he's going to turn right and face the east. That's how you know that the ramp was in the south. But the Gemara continues, but this pasuk that we're quoting in Divrei Hayomim, isn't that needed for what the context of the pasuk is itself, telling you how to arrange the bakar upon which the basin was placed? The Gemara says to that, if so, if that's all it was teaching, ponim, lamali, why does it have to keep saying ponim in the pasuk, ponim tzafona, ponim yama, etc.? So therefore, again, it teaches that all turns are to the right. And the Gemara continues, Shal Rabbi Shimon ben Yosi ben Lakunya es Rabbi Yosi. Rabbi Shimon ben Yosi ben Lakunya asked Rabbi Yosi the following question. Omer Hayi Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai Aver Yesh ben Kevesh LeMizbeach. Did Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, did he say there was some airspace between the ramp and the Mizbeach, that the ramp wasn't supposed to touch the Mizbeach? There was a little bit of space between them. Amar Lo, he said back to him, Yata Omer Kain, do you not say that? We see that from the pasuk. V'halok var nemar, doesn't it say in the pasuk in Sefer Devarim? V'yasisa olosecha habasar v'hadam. It says you'll make your olos, the meat and the blood. We compare the two. Madam bizrika, just like the blood is thrown. Af basar bizrika, so too the meat is thrown. And the Gemara is understanding the idea that the meat is thrown over that airspace between the ramp to the Mizbeach. It's thrown from the ramp, so it's thrown over that little bit of airspace. Amar Lo, he said back to him, Shani Omer, but I say, Omid b'tzad ma'aracha v'zorik. It just means he's standing by the wood, by the burning fire, and he throws it into the fire. Amar Le said back to him, Kashu zorik l'ma'aracha deluka hu zorik, o l'ma'aracha she'ena deluka hu zorik. When he's throwing it to the fire, is there a fire? Is the fire lit already, or is it not lit? Havi Omer l'ma'aracha deluka hu zorik. He's obviously throwing it to a fire that's already burning. So therefore, hasam mishum delo efsha. So obviously he has to throw it there, because there's no other way. He wouldn't be able to touch the fire. He'd burn himself. The fact that the pasuk is going out of its way to tell you that he's throwing it, that shows that it must be there's some airspace again between the kevish and the mizbeach. And the Gemara continues with a second understanding. Rav Papa says, Kidam, it has to be just like the blood. Madam avir karka mafsiko, just like when the blood is thrown, there's airspace, it's going over the ground. So too, afbas, or so too by the meat, avir karka mafsiko, when he throws it, it's not simply that he's throwing the meat into the fire, it has to go over the airspace of the ground. And again, that shows there's a little bit of airspace between the kevish, between the ramp and the mizbeach. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda says, Shnei chavoshim ketanim yotzin min hakevesh. There were two smaller ramps that went from the ramp. Shebahen ponim liyisod l'sovev. And you use those ramps to go either to the yisod, the base of the mizbeach, or to the sovev, the ledge of the mizbeach. And again, muvdolin min hamizbeach melonima. And they were separated from the mizbeach by a hair's breadth. There was a little bit of airspace between the kevesh and the mizbeach, as we said. Mishum shenemar. And the reason for that is because it says in the pasuk soviv, it says around. And so the idea over there is nothing actually touching the perimeter of the Mizbeach. It's separated, the Kevesh is separated from the Mizbeach, so that the Mizbeach is, so to speak, roundabout. Rabbi Yavo says Ravua, it says square, so if the Kevesh was touching the Mizbeach wouldn't be square. That's why it has to be separated by a little bit. And the Gemara says, V'itzrich lemichtav saviv, v'itzrich lemichtav ravua. You actually need both psukim. It needs to write saviv and it needs to write ravua. Because of Rachmana saviv, if the pasuk only wrote saviv, hava amina da'agil magil. So one might think that it could be round. Maybe the Mizbeach didn't have to be square. Because of Rachmana ravua, that's why the pasuk says ravua, it has to be square. Because of Rachmana ravua, if it said ravua, hava amina da'arich v'katan, one might think it could be rectangular. One side could be a little longer than the other, long and short. And so because of Rachmana Saviv, it says Saviv, that indicates that the square we're talking about of the Mizbeach is a perfect square and not a rectangle. And the Gemara continues, Tanan Hasam, we learned in a Mishnah over there, this is a Mishnah in Meseches Midos, Hakevesh v'hamizbeach shishim ushtayim. If you add up the ramp and the Mizbeach, it's a total of 62 amos. The Gemara says, Hani, shisin varbohav, it's not 62, it should be 64, because each one is 32 amos. 32 amos plus 32 amos should be 64. And the Gemara says, Nimtza poreach amal yisod v'amal sovev. There was an amma of the ramp that was over the base of the Mizbeach, and another amma of the ramp that was over the sovev, over the ledge of the Mizbeach. So you have to subtract 2 amos. So it's not 64 amos, it is 62 amos. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Samech Gimel Amud Aleph.